Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Wolf. I'm the programming coordinator for the Osterville Village Library. Thank you so much for being here today on this beautiful, the sun is peeping out, Friday. Today, we are excited to have the Cape and Islands District Attorney's Office here to give a presentation on cyber safety and awareness. Katie Green will be doing this presentation. Katie has dedicated over a decade of service to the Cape and Islands District Attorney's Office, holding various roles that include victim advocacy and most recently community outreach. Raised on Cape Cod, Katie's deep-rooted connection to the area fuels her commitment to community-focused work and initiatives. In her role as a community outreach coordinator, she partners with schools, local agencies, and community members to build relationships and lead proactive, preventative initiatives aimed at public safety, all with the goal of enhancing the well-being of the Cape and Islands community. Without further ado, Katie Green.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So again, my name is Katie Green. I've worked with the District Attorney's Office for over 10 years. And right now I act as a community outreach coordinator with the office. Your District Attorney is District Attorney Robert Galabois. We have offices in Barnesville Village, in Falmouth Port, in Orleans, as well as on both of the islands, Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket. We have a variety of units within our office, including, so in addition to the lawyers that work for our office as prosecutors and assistant district attorneys and appellate attorneys, we also have a community outreach team and victim witness advocates that support those individuals that have been victims of crimes or have been witnesses to crimes in our communities throughout the court process and making referrals to those resources. Wanted to share just at the offset that our office has a new website. It is pretty all-encompassing and it shares a lot of information. One of the district attorney's goals is to be very community focused and centered and also transparent with our community. And so the website is capeandislandsda.gov. And we offer you to visit that site, and there is also options on that site to direct inquiries to members of our office that can answer questions. And I myself, as a community outreach coordinator, am happy to be available as a point of contact for anybody that may want to reach somebody for the office or has questions for our office. So I just wanted to share that at the offset. This particular presentation focuses on the use of digital devices and social media, particularly in the realm of basically being an adult in a young person's life. And so that can be being a parent, it can be a grandchild that maybe, or a family member that's raising a child or helping support a child. Or just knowing young people and helping them navigate the online world. I will definitely touch upon kind of parallels of where we can all be mindful and safe when using our devices and social media as well. So some of the topics that we'll cover today are safety and privacy, cyberbullying, trends that we're seeing on social media, the legal consequences for negative online behavior, sexting, as it's referred to in some instances. It's also, we'll get into this later, but the law kind of right now establishes it as possession of or dissemination of child pornography and resources that are available. Any device that connects to the internet is a digital communication device. And one of the paramount things that we would like to drive home is that we used to always have to type in www before every website, but what that means is World Wide Web. And that still is very much the case. And so when we are allowing ourselves or specifically our young people to be using any device that's connected to the internet, we're opening the world up to them the same way as, the world is open and available. So it kind of goes both ways. So, the first thing that we can all do and be vigilant about to protect ourselves and our information online is privacy settings. So particularly each app and application that you download on your device. I know that when you install it originally, there's a lot of information that you have to go through and click accept before you can engage with that application. And I would argue that most of us don't read that and know what we're agreeing to. But the most important, even if you're not going through the nitty gritty, is by going in after the fact and making sure that your use of that app, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, is as private as possible. And then what you share from there remains as private as possible. So on Facebook and on Instagram, if you have maintained certain privacy settings on those, it really only shares with the people that you allow to be your friend or your follower. If you don't have those privacy settings enabled, then you're sharing with the world. And I argue that a lot of the time have become such a digital world and such a digital community that we're sharing things that don't seem like a big deal, but oftentimes they can be a lot of information. So something as simple as your dog. I don't know about you guys, but my dog's name in some variety has been my password plenty of times. So if you're making a post with your dog's password and that it's your birthday on a certain day, well, it could be pretty easy. Or it's your granddaughter's birthday. It could be pretty easy for anybody that wanted to hack into accounts if you're not diligent about your passwords, to get information or that they could then use later to try to get further information from you or about you. Not using usernames that have identifying information. So we encourage the young people that we speak to at the schools can invite us to do presentations specifically to students in schools. And usually we aim those conversations and try to aim those conversations to like the intermediate school level students. And we highly encourage them not to have identifying information as their usernames. So if they're using Instagram and they're setting up their account, KMA13, we can have a hunch that the name is Kate, they're 13 years old, or they were born in 2013, and they live in Massachusetts, whereas Sox rule, obviously that's much more ambiguous. We don't know what that number might mean. They could, like the Red Sox or the Paw Sox or the White Sox. And, so just starting there, and same with biographies. So your bio is usually something that is public, or those about me sections. And so being very careful and discerning. And another thing too, to be aware of is that every time you update an app, your privacy settings may default to the original, which is basically nothing. So go in, it's the same as, housekeeping at home. You have to housekeep on your devices and on your applications. So go back in and make sure that nothing has been defaulted back to the previous settings, which were to allow much more information to be shared. Because it's entirely okay to share with your community that you allow online. We just are the ones that are ultimately responsible for being vigilant about who that community is and what it becomes. Another thing is that for young people in particular, we need to appreciate that online spaces are very much a community to them. It's where they connect. It's how they make friends and keep friendships and forge relationships and stay connected with each other. But it's also a space where people can show up as KMA13, and they are not actually KMA13, but a young person that gets reached out to by KMA13, and they say that they go play lacrosse at the town over and they become friends. That's a way that oftentimes we can see young people who are just trusting and who believe and establish relationships online, and that's very normal and common for them, or they build them, to then have that become a situation that is unsafe, or that is something that a parent or a guardian may not know about and would probably not support if they did know it. So we always are encouraging young people not to meet a person in person that they have only met online. Which apps are your children on? So, here's a few of them. TikTok is a popular one, Twitter, or that's X now, so I've got to update that slide. We've got Snapchat is a big one. We'll talk about that later. And Instagram, YouTube is huge, and that's another one that can be tough because there's kids versions of YouTube's. I would say that all of these, the minimum age requirement is 13 years old. And we know for a fact that young people are putting pressure on the adults in their lives to let them get on them earlier and earlier. So just at the offset, not that apps have the best interest of children in mind, but if they're setting a limit at 13, like that's really as low as it should go. And we should trust that. But we have to be just as familiar with these if we're letting our kids use it, because again, it's the World Wide Web. And so if we don't have a familiarity with how these work or what these are, it can be very troubling to find out that TikTok is not simply, kids their age that are doing dance routines online. It can be much more than that. Specifically, this map relates to Snapchat. So this is an example of what's called a snap map. And so these little figures are something that if privacy settings aren't enabled, or if location is shared by a young person or anyone, you can see actually on a geographical map. You can zoom in or zoom out. And if you have Snapchat right now, you can do this, even if you don't share your location or your information. You can go into Snap Maps and you can see which friends of yours do share their location, and you can actually see on a map where they are right now.
Are you talking about at the moment or just down in Chris?
At the moment, so it breaks it down by streets. It's an actual map. It looks just like this. And so, if you toggle out, you can see, kind of a small little person usually, or a marker, and it will show the town. But if you zoom in, it will show much closer where they are, where their location is. Now, some people want to do this, and a lot of the youth like to share their location with their friends. And they want to know where each other are. And so it's just critical that as parents and as adults in the lives of young people, we're setting the boundaries and the parameters. If we are letting them use Snapchat, you can use Snapchat, but your location isn't enabled. If somebody needs to know where you are, that's probably me or another family member, and we have other ways to do that. If your friend wants to reach out to you and you want to provide them that information, that's how you can do that. You have text messaging for that. So there's other ways that that they can socially get what I think are trying to get without it completely giving access. And again, if they update their Snapchat and the privacy isn't enabled, well, then who else can see it? It's not just your friends that you've added.
I guess my concern is from the safety standpoint. Like if someone has access to their location who's not really a friend, who's supposed to have access to location and knowing where that person is. I guess that's how I'm looking at it.
It's a huge concern. And so, when you're letting or permitting the young person to download the app, if that's your choice, you're going through that with them. So I'll make the analogy. I heard this and I love this, right? So we should treat social media and the use of the internet the same way that we do with cars and children. So when they're a baby, they're in a car seat. They're strapped in, it's specifically made for them. And that's how they spend the first portion of their lives in the car. They're very protected, there's parameters, there's guidelines. And then from there, they move on to a booster seat. And then they move out of the booster seat and they're still seat belted and they're in the back seat. And then at a certain age, they move to the front seat. Then they go through driving school. Then they can drive on their own. And so applying that same mentality about keeping your child safe on the road and in the car as you would to the internet and literally the world, the greater world. When you first give them a device, you are putting the world in their hands if you don't set the parameters around what the expectations are, what the boundaries should be, what the family, what your family system's rules are about that, what consequences will be if they're not, and why. Share with them why. And it's not that you have to make it seem scary. It's just that that's just not what we do.
I think the thing is, and realistically, I guess my background as an educator,
Mhm.
and I work with a lot of special needs kids. And, so neurotypical and neurodiverse kids is that, you're talking about a more perfect situation.
Mhm.
You're not necessarily speaking to a typical student
Mhm.
or child or
Mhm.
family.
Mhm.
I mean, this sounds really nice, but it doesn't really happen that way. Kids are sneaky,
Kids are sneaky.
kids
They
are
absolutely
kids.
are.
And, I don't, so it's not, I mean, this is nice and this is great,
Yeah.
and I've tried to do it even with my daughter, but, she's on the apps that I don't even know about, and I
Mhm.
find out later, even though I have these
Mhm.
things and filters and whatever in her face,
Mhm.
she'll get around, she's clever.
Were you in here earlier when I said that they use their smarts for like all the wrong? all the wrong things?
No, I'm not,
They're
but I
ingenious
agree.
about,
I
they're
agree.
ingenious about being sneaky
Oh,
and
yeah.
about getting the
And
workarounds
it's like,
for the rules.
we're just, 10 steps behind when it comes to technological things.
I know,
And it's like, how the heck did you do that?
I know,
You take the phone away, but then a friend has a ghost phone,
yes.
so,
Mhm.
like I said, this is something that just is a huge, huge issue, and,
It is huge, and I totally hear you, and we are not going to solve all the world's problems by
No, we're
having
not.
privacy settings or anything like that, but I think that, if we wave the white flag on this, our
No.
kids are worse off, and also, argument could be made, well, what's the point of locking my door when they can just smash into a window and get in anyways?
right.
You
No, I
should
know.
still lock your
I
door.
mean, I don't have social media because I don't want her to have social media. So if
Okay.
she sees me have
Fair.
it,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's just, so I understand, but I'm just saying, I think this is it's a great analogy. And I think part of it is the earlier we start
Mhm.
with our children and model for them, the better it is
Mhm.
too. I think if you wait till even middle school, it's too late. But it's something that I think, I don't know if people realize how pervasive and how serious of a problem it is.
I agree, 100%. I do strongly believe that, just like any parenting situation, we all do the best that we possibly can for our kids and to keep our kids safe. And these are tools to do so and to try our best. And so it's always going to be evolving. It is a full-time job. Believe me, I spent all night one night learning how to put the screen limits and the password enabling and not make it so that certain apps couldn't be downloaded, and the phone was completely jailbroken 24 hours later. And then after I took the phone, they were able to buy a new one at the high school from a friend. So it's a challenge, and I get it and I hear you. But just maintaining, first of all, it sounds like you're very open and honest and you have conversations with your child too. And I think that that's huge. It's not acting like it's, this is what's happening. This is what I'm telling you, but this is what I'm suggesting. This is a privilege, first of all. It's a privilege, first of all. And I understand that it's a way for you to connect with your friends, and it's a way for you to listen to your music, and it's a way for you to watch Netflix, your favorite show, and unwind after a long day. Get that, 100%. But there's parameters and there's boundaries, just like everything else in life. And so I'm willing to be in this with you and tell you why I'm going to say that this app is a no in our home, or it's no until you're 14. Or it's yes, but with these privacy settings enabled, and I can check it at random and make sure that you're still private. And just having a conversation, asking them if they oppose that, why? Or why do they think so? And you were speaking earlier to neurodiverse people or people with disabilities, and there are so many more complexities there, and every family is going to have to navigate these things differently, but this is universal. Like enabling or disabling your location is universal. Setting what the expectations are in your household, and if they decide to be sneaky, well, then every family will deal with that differently. And I will get into it later, but there are devices that are available, that if you look them up, that are pretty locked down just in general.
Yeah, and I think that's important to discuss, and I don't wanna hold everybody up, but there are some students that do not have phones. So when you hear the thing that, oh, everyone, I've taught many students, many surprisingly, who for whatever reason do not have a phone. And they are fine. They're fine. They live, they breathe, they're smart. They're surviving.
Yes.
So whatever their family rule is, whatever reason, some where they just don't believe in it, their families. And others, it was punitive, but they're living, breathing.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Ooh. All right, just advance these slides way too much. Absolutely, and parenting is certainly not easy. It is not for the faint of heart, but once we make decisions as parents, sure, we can be malleable, we can make adjustments, and we can change the sales. But sometimes it's not a negotiation, and it's that this is the choice, this is what our family does. It really isn't relevant what other families do. It really isn't, because so many other families are comprised of different people who do different things and have different belief systems, and their household is not relevant to ours. Having high numbers of friends and followers online can be risky. I sit in auditoriums filled with children who I ask how many friends and followers they have. How many followers do you have on your Instagram? Do you keep your hand up if you have 1,000? Keep your hand up if you have 2,000, 5,000. And they will keep their hands up. And then I will say, take your hand down if you know all of those 4,000, 3,000, 2,500 people. And they don't. They just want the followers. It's social currency to them. They believe that their value is equated to how many followers they have, or likes, or views, or streams. And having very open and frank conversations about how that isn't actually related to their worth or their value or their likability, and how that is actually risky, because if they're sharing photos of themselves and their family members and their friends, they are sharing that information with strangers. So I ask that they apply the Cape Cod Mall strategy to their online lives. So if you would not go to the food court at the Cape Cod Mall and walk up to a stranger and say, hey, here's this picture of me and my friend this summer at the beach, having an ice cream cone in our bathing suits, and then this next slide, us doing a viral TikTok dance in those same bathing suits. If you think that that would be something you would never do, if you think that's something that your parent wouldn't want you doing, if that's something you think would be weird or feel uncomfortable, that is exactly the same thing as you are doing when you open your online accounts up to just anybody and to people that you don't know. So that is logical. That is a very easy way to put it. And a lot of light bulbs do go off, and they laugh about that when I say it. but it's this exact same thing. I would love to remind them that all forms of digital communication can be forwarded, shared, altered, printed. Once you hit send, that is the most dangerous four-letter word in a digital environment. Send, post is another one. You do not get to control what happens with it. And so once you do post, share, send something, there can be a screenshot, there can be a screen recording, it can be altered, but it can also just be, it's permanent, it's data. And so, especially in cases and instances where things are being said maybe in the heat of the moment, or when they're feeling really down, or when they're just not showing up as their best selves, or we aren't showing up as our best selves, that isn't the time to post, send, share. To make it very, Snapchat has done a particularly great job of this, where images disappear after a certain period of time. That's the appeal to people, is that it just goes away. It's like you see it and then it goes away. But from a perspective of the legal kind of realm of the government, if there's anything that a police officer needs as evidence of a crime that's being committed, like threats, or anything like that, or if kids are recording fights, that is something that we can write a subpoena and get it from Snapchat very easily. Or their friend has already screen grabbed it and sent it to 16 other kids that have sent it to 2,500 other kids from another school. So that is huge to drive home. Where the use of digital devices and social media and the internet can cross the criminal line. So obviously the DA's office prosecutes crimes, and so it's important that we, have a community awareness and understanding, but particularly young people who can be impulsive and their brains aren't fully formed, and they maybe are making snap decisions that they don't understand the implications of. So these are some instances that we just set as examples for where the use of devices can get people into trouble. I would say that the threats and the harassment are, I think, the two more prevalent ones, threatening to get into fights at school, after school, to harm somebody or to cause harm. That's very common. And phones, devices, things that are attached to the internet, they create, data is permanent. Data is permanent. And if a law has, if somebody is not abiding by the law, that is something that could be accessed by law enforcement if needed. And the charges of possession of child pornography and dissemination of child pornography are included on this presentation. This is a kind of a parent guardian focused presentation. Schools are able to tell us when we go into schools and we do presentations for students specifically. Schools tell us if they want for us to touch on these two charges, and it's, as I had said earlier in the presentation, loosely referred to as sexting or sending nudes. And those are the two criminal charges right now that exist in Massachusetts that relate to when a person takes or sends an explicit image of themselves or somebody else and transmits it or keeps it on their device. So I will touch on that later. Just because I'm about halfway, I want to see if anybody has any questions or comments or anything that I can clear up that I haven't.
Can I just ask a question? So, because I'm from another state, so when I worked in the public school system there, like we had our town police come in and do the presentations, but does that happen here, or is it through your office that they come in?
Thank you for your question. So our office offers this to any school that wants it across Cape Cod and the islands, public, private, charter. And I don't know specifically of police departments that do offer it, not that they would be unwilling, I just don't know of any. So it just, I guess, depends, but most of our schools on Cape and Islands have representatives from a police department called school resource officers that we will work together with when we're doing these presentations. Oftentimes they're at least there and helping to kind of like facilitate the conversation. And usually the juvenile court prosecutor does the presentation as well. She's the one that ends up prosecuting the cases in the juvenile court if they get brought to her. So she offers that kind of legal lens as well.
But it usually comes from your
Usually,
office.
yes, yeah. It's just kind of like one of our prevention offerings.
I think it's so necessary.
Thank you. So just a few examples of consequences. We don't use any Cape Cod based consequences, but just kind of illustrating how reporting fights that they think it's funny, they think it's fun to report fights that happen in school, that becomes evidence. It makes the case, very supported in the criminal court when they have reported it. But if they're reporting fights, there's a possible, we know that they're a witness then they could get pulled from school and be needed to testify in a trial. And it's just something that becomes, it's something that we try to dismay young people from doing. Again, the threats, people posting to their Snapchats, things that they're selling, whether it's THC cartridges or drugs or, oftentimes I think the threats of harm or, even school threats are posted on Snapchat. And then we like to also offer a couple of other important examples of the way that it can impact, like, your citizenry in the digital world can impact your future. And so, the apps are always changing, but data is permanent. So you may forget when you're 18 years old that you had a Twitter, because Twitter isn't even a thing anymore, and you were posting as a 13-year-old all of this absolutely ridiculous stuff, and somebody Googles you and they find your old Twitter and they see all of the ridiculous things that you were posting and that you never got rid of because you forgot it even happened. And that can impact you in your future and job opportunities and scholarships. And so these are a couple of examples. In 2019, Harvard rescinded an admission as a result of tweets that they found that were racist in nature. And so obviously a person that got into Harvard had worked very hard academically, you would think, but just something that they had done that was, them showing who they were and creating a digital reputation for themselves came to follow them later on in life. Sadly, we've been seeing TikTok trends that are actually just harmful, and that I'm sure everybody saw the Tide Pod challenges. This particular challenge referenced in this slide is about a blackout challenge, or sometimes it was called a fainting game, and literally a child died as a result of his injuries. But young people want to go viral. Going viral is when the video that you create or the post that you make becomes so popular online that that so many people are seeing it, and there's a belief and an understanding that you will make great money and be famous. And so that is something that becomes aspirational to young people. And so that's also something that we've been seeing. One of the TikTok challenges was an outlet challenge where kids were sticking things into outlets, which is obviously very dangerous. And then there was another challenge that related to vandalism that we were actually seeing, like we were seeing these challenges being taken out in our schools here in our local community. It was resulting in property being damaged in our schools. And so instilling and working really hard to try to instill in them that that their decisions in the short term can have implications in the long term is what we're always trying to drive home. We do not want to act as our office as if digital devices and the internet are evil or are something that we don't want for them to be eyes wide open using and enjoying, but we want them to understand the implications of their responsibility on there as well. So sexting is anyone who takes, possesses, or sends a sexual nude or partially nude photo, even of themselves, and they may be charged with a crime. The thing that is so concerning about this is that, again, to my point earlier about how once something is sent or shared, you no longer have control of it. And so, I think, oh yes, 12% of teens have forwarded sexually explicit message that they received without permission. So usually it's somebody asks for it from a girlfriend or somebody they have a boyfriend, somebody they have a relationship with, or maybe don't have a relationship with. That person sends it, and then it gets shared with other people. And we definitely are seeing situations in our schools and communities where, I won't play that video, but I'll go into what it says, but where, you know, relationships change and fade, and once it's sent, it can be very damaging. This was a particular case that I like to share about because this individual from Whitman, I believe, was posing as a 13-year-old girl on Snapchat. So he was on Snapchat. I don't know what his username was, but I imagine it wasn't Matt Murphy 25. I imagine it was something else. And he started talking to young middle school aged boys, forging a relationship with them over time, communicating with them, and they ultimately were coerced into sending explicit messages of themselves to him. Thankfully, he was investigated, charged, and subsequently sentenced to prison time. But this is just an example of like driving home the fact to everybody that it's not our kids and our young people that are saying like, let me send this or talk to this adult. They're not understanding who that may be or could be, and not to scare them, but to be very real with them that anyone that they don't know for sure, it is a stranger, or they should presume that it is a stranger, and what the family rules, social rules, and norms are around communicating with strangers. Keeping lines of communication open, and also encouraging them to have an awareness in themselves of who their people are. So even if their person isn't you, do they have a guidance counselor at school? Do they have a friend? Really encouraging them to always be kind of putting their feelers out for how does this make me feel? How does this communication make me feel? If it makes you feel uncomfortable or unsettled, trust that. These are some resources that are available specifically kind of in the realm of online safety. So Bark Technology, this is not like this is just from basic research of what's out there for families that may want to allow for their child or young person to have a device or to have some level of access, maybe not have to face the social ostracism that you were kind of referring to earlier about how everybody else has a phone and everybody else has this. Bark Technology, and I think quite a few others at this point, have devices that allow for what you need them to allow for, and they don't allow for the other stuff. It's a way that you can kind of meet in the middle if you want to, as a parent of a young or a guardian of a young person, where you can kind of really have much better oversight. So it has parental controls, they have specific devices. NetSmarts is an online resource, from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They have safety education programs online, so they're free. You just type in your email address and you can download. They have PowerPoints, they have, a wealth of information that they keep very up to date about kind of, what is going on in our, online spaces. As it relates to children and how to, keep the safety up. So this presentation is not all encompassing. We certainly are just touching on a couple of little areas and regions where our office sees kind of the most, like the troubled areas, but it's always changing. The landscape is always changing. And we have to be super vigilant about staying in the know. And then the last resource, Take It Down, is also provided by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, called Take It Down. This specifically relates to the sending of explicit images that I had shared with you earlier. If anybody, it doesn't matter, sends an image that or somebody becomes aware of an image that exists of them that they do not want online, this is a free service that's available to help them get it taken down offline.
There's another good resource. It's called the GAB phone, GABB,
Okay,
and it's one that's not Wi-Fi accessible.
okay, awesome. So the GAB phone, GABB. That's awesome. So I will definitely look into that one. I mean, I definitely, I also referenced Life 360. That's another application that, Life 360. I'm pretty sure you have to pay, it's like a subscription, but you can get all kinds of information about, your young person's phone usage. You can even have like keywords. It will pick out keywords in the messages that they're sending back and forth. If there's any, reference to self-harm or violence or of a sexual nature. And so it's a way to monitor. I mean, we can all only do the best that we can, but if there's tools out there that can help us and support us in doing so, that's huge.
Yeah, I don't quite understand that. So say you're the guardian, you can have an app that will monitor the child's, what they're writing, what they're sending out. What is that called again?
Life 360. I believe the Bark technology phones have that, and maybe the Gap phones have that as well. They do constant searches for certain things that are happening on the devices. And again, the biggest bold at the bottom of this particular slide is open and honest communication. We want to be doing as much of this as possible in tandem with our young people. So making them aware that we're doing this and this is why. It's not so that we can shut down their social lives. It's just so that we can make rules. But it's so that I can ensure that you're safe. It's my job to keep you safe and to protect you. And I have the life experience and the awareness to know that this is the choice that we're making. This phone is a privilege. This tablet is a privilege. This device is a privilege. And with every privilege, it's not a guarantee. And there's parameters, there's boundaries, there's rules. But yes, these particular things, I think Life 360 can even track how fast they're going if they're driving in a car.
And where do you get them?
So Life 360 is an application, so you can actually download it on your device or you can research it online. Another thing that I personally do that I would share with anybody is sometimes I would take my teenager's phone and see what apps were on there, and I just didn't know what it was. And so I would just do a quick Google search, like this is what the icon looks like. What is that? And then I'd find out the name, and then I'd go on YouTube, and like, honestly, people create a lot of content around what something is and how to use it. And so I'd be like, what is this app? I'd go on YouTube and say, Snapchat app, how to use, and I'd get a very quick and easy rundown of how to use it. And then I'd also Google the bad side of X or the dangerous thing about this app. And usually there is a wealth of information about what the bad sides or what the dangerous sides could be or may be. So for example, with the Snapchat, there's the ability to location share. There's also, I didn't share this with you, I forgot about this. There's the ability to have a hidden gallery. So they have a gallery of images that you can see, but then they have a hidden gallery on Snapchat that is password or face protected and that you don't even know exists. So that has a whole other arsenal of photos.
It's like the double calculator.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a double calculator app. Another one that's very popular, is, if a lot of times, they can hide folders inside of folders. And so if you're looking at their home screen and it looks like there's a bunch of the little app icons, like squares, but then there's one square that has like a few. Well, if you go into the one, you click on the one that has a few, and then you slide over, they can hide apps in there, in those folders, and so, again, back to them using their smarts for
No good.
for no good. So that's another way, but I highly encourage using YouTube to just get a quick rundown, quick and dirty rundown of what things are and what you need to be aware of. Or just even asking them, hey, I noticed that app. We didn't talk about that app. What is that? What do you like about it? What do you do on it? Who do you talk to on there? These are, if you should feel very, very encouraged to be having these open dialogues. Because even if they're, like my teenager is and was, they probably won't offer much up, but, it's worth a try. And then also, sometimes they do, or they at least know that you're willing to talk to them about it. And it opens the door, I think, and you can just ask questions, and if you don't ask questions, you're never gonna get an answer. If you do, you might. Who do you talk to on there? You know that if you are talking to people on there, my expectation would be that it's friends. Friends of yours that you know from school. Do you talk to friends? Ask the questions. And setting boundaries. I promise you, if every parent banded together and actually agreed on screen time and actually agreed that they weren't going to let the devices go to the bedrooms, the kids all keep their hands raised when I ask them if they're on their phones at midnight, when you think they're sleeping. Because they tell you they need to be listening to the music, fall asleep. I promise you, they all admit it, that they're on their phones after you think that they've gone to sleep, and then they wake up tired and they don't want to go to school, and it's a trickle down effect. So if we all just band together and just adopt this in our own households and communicate with other parents about it, it will make a huge difference. And they should know that, that like anything in life, that you're not just going to let them get on their bike and ride off to wherever they want and never let you know where they're going, right? So why would you do that with a phone? Why would you do that with their device? Sure.
Can you go back to the last slide?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so you say clean up all social media accounts. What do you mean by that?
Okay, great question. Thank you for asking. So cleaning up all social media accounts relates to the sharing or the oversharing. So I didn't so much delve into this. So specifically, I would say super identifying things. So one of my best examples would be the people that have their kiddos going to school for the first day and they're standing out with the placard.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, my grandchildren have that.
Yeah, it says who their teacher is.
Yeah.
It says what their favorite color is. It says, you know, what school they go to.
Yes.
And it says a lot of identifying information. And I'm even really bad about this. Like, I got Facebook over 10 years ago. There's people that I added because they were friends from high school that I have no connection with, that I'm not going in and cleaning up and deleting them or not adding them. So random people from high school that have no relation to me in my life, if I'm posting that, they know who my daughter is, where she goes to school, what her teacher's name is, and all that. And it's just why. So asking your, like, doing a cost benefit analysis, I guess. And also just, it's kind of in the realm of oversharing. Same with vacations. So if you're posting that you're heading out on vacation, doesn't everybody know that your home is possibly, is vacant? Granted, we live in the world of Nest and, all of the security, Arlo and all the security systems, but, not everybody has one. And so, that's what it's referring to. It's referring to that kind of stuff that kind of puts out, too much information. Maybe, I think when social media first started, like especially Facebook, I feel like you shared your hometown, you shared where you went to college, what years you went to college, all of that, what your dog's name is, all of that. And it's just paring things down. I mean, what do I want to share? Especially knowing that when a lot of these apps do update, that they set back to the defaults and that all the privacy settings that you put into place may not be there anymore.
Okay, so I've got the next question. Update privacy and location settings with every update. Why?
So that refers to what I was just saying.
Okay.
So some apps, when you update them, they go back to the default settings, which usually are that it's public or not super like locked down, like you make it. And location settings may be enabled, like as a default.
And
And
you
so,
know,
well, it depends, right? So like you and I would have to, if we wanna get directions to go to a certain place, we would have to enable that Google can have our location right now. So usually apps, I don't know if you've seen this, like if you were pulling up directions to come here today, it will say like allow once or allow while using the app, or just allow. Or don't allow. Usually if you want the directions, you gotta allow it on some level. So my favorite is to allow once or allow while I'm using the app. But usually, and every phone is different, every device is different. This is how they make it really hard and really tedious. Again, YouTube is your friend, so like my iPhone is different from my parents' Samsung. And so if they wanna do something, I usually go on YouTube and I'm like, how to disable location on this, and it will show you really quick how to do it.
I do that, well, I would wanna know where my grandson is. So why do I want location off?
So that's a great question. So we're not referring to location specifically that's meaningfully shared. So you have intentionally shared your grandson's location, I'm guessing, on his device. You've shared it with yourself. Absolutely. That's where it benefits us. Absolutely. You just don't want him on Instagram publicly tagging himself at Craigville Beach
You don't want the world to know.
as a 10-year-old. You know what I mean? That's what we're talking about. Great question. I'm glad you asked that so that we can discern the difference.
Make sure their phone has password protected screen lock. Okay, so what you're basically saying is make sure it has a password on it. I understand, okay.
Yep. So the reason that we would want the password protected screen lock, and we all want this, kids, adults, everybody, because if you leave your phone behind somewhere and somebody can get in it, it's just a free for all. It's not even, they just get to keep the phone, honestly.
Yeah.
And then they may be able to access whatever else is on it. Where if you have a password protected screen lock, that disables that ability. And I think especially in, schools where young people think that they're being funny. We see even instances where friends are friends one day and enemies the next in middle school, but they shared passwords when they were friends. And then the friend that they are enemies with now goes on their account and shares something as if it's them, but it's not. And it's maybe bad, it maybe gets them into trouble. It's embarrassing, so never sharing passwords and always having passwords.
Yeah.
And good ones. Thank you for asking. Follow your child's accounts. You should have that too. You should be able to see. Setting parameters, even if you don't follow them, maybe it's that I want to be able to check what you're sharing. in my role, I also spend a lot of time going to schools and having meetings. With schools about, you know, certain students and things that are happening in the schools with certain students. And, parents are always surprised to find out what their child posted on Instagram last night. To their stories, or, you know, what they sent to their friend on Snapchat. It can be very surprising, and it's not to say that doing all of these things is going to prevent everything. We can't always do everything, but we can certainly do everything in our power to keep them as safe as possible and as protected as possible, and ourselves. Actually, having this conversation makes me want to go on my Facebook and make sure everything's tightened up. Thank you for your time and attention today. I'd love to open it up to questions.
Follow your child's account. What exactly does that mean? Do you have an app that?
So to follow their account would be to, you have the app yourself. So if it's Facebook, you have Facebook and you have them as a friend so that you can see what they post. Or if they have an Instagram, you can go on their Instagram. And it's not to say that you have to download all these apps yourself, but maybe you say, I'm okay with you having Instagram, but I want to be able to see it.